lesson. So today I'm just going to kind of talk about the core cloud computing concepts, give an overview of different cloud computing companies, talk about different cloud computing models. So this is kind of the basics of cloud, and hopefully you'll be able to answer, for your parents or for yourself that nothing just lives in the cloud, in the air. It's actually more physical and has more meaning than that. So let's get started. All right, so just before we get to the core concepts, I want to just share a story, how you can really think of cloud computing in terms of Microsoft Office. So before cloud computing with just kind of traditional computing, you had to actually go to a store to buy a CD. When I was younger, this is what happened. We went to a store like Best Buy, and then we actually went to, like the Office section, Microsoft section, software section, that type of thing. And you actually had to physically purchase the CD that had all these different, applications on it, like Excel, PowerPoint, Access, that type of thing. And you had to put it in your computer and install the software, basically. Nowadays, what you're probably more familiar with is you have Office 365, and there's actually a picture here of a cloud, right? So that signifies you can access this stuff on the internet. You don't have to, you know, go to Best Buy anymore and buy the CD. You can just sign in to Microsoft, and then you have access to all these different platforms. Of course, there's a lot more than there used to be, but the basic ones are still there, right? Like Microsoft Word or PowerPoint or anything like that. The same for, Google Docs. Google Docs is also cloud computing. So basically think of it as, you have access to different services over the internet, whereas before computing was more, individual. You had to actually load software into your individual machine. Okay, and I wanted to also show you that cloud skills are in demand. There's a lot of different things you can do in cloud computing. So even just, a cloud consultant where you kind of know the ins and outs of different cloud platforms. You can, on DataCamp, you'll do a AWS intro. There's a lot of different stuff on DataCamp that will get you the ins and outs of cloud computing. You can set up cloud security. You can kind of be a data scientist or data analyst within the cloud environment. Talk about cloud automation when we'll talk about data infrastructure and cloud architect. So you actually design kind of the basically architecture of your company within cloud environment. Administrator, kind of keeping up with cloud computing, but a lot of these salaries pay a lot because a lot of people really don't know what cloud is and how it works. So I recommend if you're really interested in this to go into DataCamp and start learning. So what is the cloud? Kind of a use case, kind of general example here with DataCamp. So imagine you graduate from college, you want to start a website. You're a company that has a website. So in the DataCamp example, you have users that actually visit your website, watch videos, learn how to do things, etc. So you want to give a free week or complimentary week so people can try out your website or whatever you're offering. So because of this, your website traffic will increase. So when that happens, you could have problems with your infrastructure. So if your demand kind of exceeds the capabilities of what you have set up with your servers and everything, basically high traffic would slow stuff down, and you can't, your current infrastructure might not be able to keep up with the actual demand for your free week. So in the old days, remember you would own your own server, you would set up your own software and design it, and you'd also have to maintain it. Servers only live about 10 years, so then you have to buy a new server. There's a lot of maintenance going on. The IT person really would code the software, do the maintenance, kind of behind the scenes. Nowadays, you would actually use a cloud platform to do this and set up everything within like Amazon or Google, and you would let them maintain your infrastructure so that you can keep up with your demand whenever you need it. There's also access to software, just like Microsoft Office, in each company's platform, and you can kind of plug and play with different pieces of software, right? So there's even AI software, analytics software, that type of thing within these cloud computing environments. So cloud computing has come a long way in the last 10 years. 10 years ago, in 2015, it was really, a lot of companies were using it, but it hadn't really taken off like it has, you know, now, today, or in 2025. And it's really just projected to go up from there. So what it really does is it provides this kind of infrastructure for your company. And within that infrastructure, we talked about with the AI systems. I'm going to say so within that infrastructure space lives all these different pieces of software that you can adopt and use. You can store your data in the infrastructure. You can use the software to analyze, you know, your data. There's tons of different pieces of software in there that enables you to basically build your business within the cloud environment. So what can you do? Just kind of a list here. You can host your websites, store files, you can back up your files, you can create and program software applications, um, you know, set up streaming for audio and video, store and analyze your data, build and embed AI models. There's a ton of stuff you can do here with cloud computing as you build your business. So there are several benefits. So I'll kind of just go through these. One is the classic one, scalability. So it's easily to add and remove resources. Resources are basically files or data or pictures or whatever as you need them. So you can start small and then just kind of grow your business as your customers increase. And then if you have that big demand week, for example, with a free week on DataCamp, um, you can use basically you don't have to pay for what you don't use. So if you have a free week and there's high demand, you can pay for that high demand week and then you don't have to pay for it later, um, after the free week. So that leads to cost. So it's kind of pay as you go. So you only pay for all these resources that you're using. And this really eliminates, for example, these expenses that, I used to work for a web design company and we had our own server in there. Um, and we had to buy, the server and the hardware and the software and the maintenance. So you have the biggest cost here is the infrastructure itself, the infrastructure being the server, and then you have to pay someone that knows how to work with infrastructure, maintain your software code. So there's a ton of work on that infrastructure level in the old days, and now all these companies kind of do that for you within the cloud computing environment. Um, so when you adopt cloud, services, you basically can get the space and software that you need, and you can actually deploy, your business within, very fast. So it used to take a long time. Like building software takes, at least a year or two, and now you have access to the infrastructure, the software. You can store your data, and you can kind of set that up, even in minutes if you're doing something really simple. You have access to all these tools, and it helps you speed up kind of your time to delivery, basically. Your performance, so companies regularly update the software, like I said before. So you don't have to update your software anymore. They also maintain the infrastructure and the features, so you can kind of concentrate on your own business rather than concentrate on the software around your business. So the role of the IT person has changed fundamentally. It's more about creating relationships with cloud vendors and managing all these different software applications rather than just sitting there programming all day. Um, you can grow your company however you need to. This relates to scalability. Also, reliability. So, it ensures basically that everything is reliable, your data is backed up. Cloud computing companies do this for you, so you don't really have to worry about it. And then cloud computing companies also manage the security and secure everything for you so you don't have to really do that yourself. And there's also specific ones, specific cloud solutions like AWS has one for healthcare or for government. So it meets all these different regulations like in banking, in government data and healthcare data like HIPAA. So there's a lot of different options here. It's pretty wild. And then, of course, there's risks. So, as a cloud consultant, you would kind of help a company identify the benefits and the risks, and then they would pay you a lot of money to do that. So, one risk is basically, yes, data breaches and security. Most hackers will target these big companies, and eventually they'll get in. So, they're not, a lot of times they don't really target smaller companies, but there's more data in these bigger companies. So they store massive amounts of data, making them prime targets basically. Um, so downtime. So you're kind of really reliant on these companies. So if AWS or Google Cloud goes down, your website basically goes down as well. And I believe Canvas uses AWS. And one time during finals week a few years ago, AWS went down. And I think, it was kind of COVID times, so people were taking, there were online classes and people were taking exams online, so it was kind of a big hassle. Data privacy and compliance. So the data may be subject to different laws depending on where it's located. Companies handling your data need to comply with different regulations. So, this becomes more of a hassle dealing with big companies. Um, you need to ensure that these regulations are actually complied with. So you need to really work hard with these companies to do that. Often the companies, like if you subscribe to Comcast or something and your bill goes up, the same thing kind of happens to this. So this can lead to unexpected high costs if you're not really monitoring everything. So a company forgetting to turn off unused cloud services. So you may be processing a bunch of data and kind of if you're not don't really have a devoted cloud people monitoring everything, you may be, overusing storage and that kind of leads to constant processing, for example, and that could lead to really high bills. And then the last one is kind of a classic vendor lock-in and your control. So you don't really have a lot of control here if you adopt their software or their services. You kind of have to take it as you go. So, if you really want like a custom software or something like that, you don't really have control. You have to kind of adopt what Amazon has or what Google has or what Microsoft has. So a little more about cloud. There are different cloud service models. So how you can actually think about cloud and the different components of cloud computing. So these are broken down into three categories or three components, IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS or SaaS. The first component is IaaS or infrastructure as a service. So if you look at this picture over here, it's all the green stuff. Basically, you get access to storage, servers, something called virtualization, which is kind of the core of the cloud, which I won't really get into in this class, and then networking. So you basically get access to all their infrastructure, the actual servers, the data centers, that type of thing. So you can, rent basically all the infrastructure, so you don't have to, um, you know, buy a server yourself. So you can, use that type of cloud service model if you want. You don't have to use their software. You can just kind of put your data there and store it there so you don't have to worry about the infrastructure. The next one's called platform as a service. So this is basically renting the infrastructure and then this comes with different tools such as tools and software to actually develop and build applications within the cloud. So if you wanted to actually build your own applications, you would basically get access to all the infrastructure stuff as well as the ability to build and manage different applications within cloud computing. So this is kind of ideal for developers to build apps without really managing servers behind the scenes. And so you can kind of set up what's called a sandbox and test a lot of applications, and you don't have to deal with all the technical stuff going on behind the scenes. The cloud company will do that for you. The last level is something you all really have used if you use like Google Docs or Office 365. So you're using the software via like a web browser app, kind of a public facing software. So everything's really managed by the cloud vendor. So you get access to basically everything when you use Google Docs, for example. All the stuff is there for you, you know, um, and your ability to actually just use the software without any hassle. And in addition to that, there's also three different types of cloud deployment models. So if you're a business actually looking to adopt cloud, you can do it in different ways. So you have a private cloud, a public cloud, or a hybrid cloud. So a private cloud is basically for exclusive use. You basically would need like a special network or link or access. It's really secure for your organization. You can hire a company like AWS. One a company that does this is called Rackspace. So basically host your infrastructure for you. You would just have access to their infrastructure, um, and you have a little more control over what happens here. It is expensive, um, so it just depends on what type of control you want over your organization. Then you have something called public cloud. So this is kind of shared infrastructure model. So it's used by the general public. The infrastructure is managed by providers and owned by the providers. Organizations can get started with a business with really minimal investment. This is really kind of the cloud computing you're thinking about. You log in, you get started. It's nothing really customer specific, whereas private is like really more, you can use the infrastructure of the companies, but it takes a lot more work to really get started. And then you have limited control here. So private, you have a lot of control. Public, you have limited control. And then a hybrid is really a combination of both. Um, you could store sensitive data on a private cloud for security reasons and then use like the public cloud analytics or software to really analyze the data, for example. So it would be you have a lot of control over your data and storage, and you get to use someone else's infrastructure, which is costly, but you also have access to the tools that they have to really analyze that actual data. So this is called another example of hybrid cloud when people would use it is something called cloud bursting. So when a private cloud is kind of overwhelmed by traffic spikes, like I talked about with the data camp free week, you can actually have a private cloud, and then if you have a lot of stuff happen on your website that you can't really manage, that can roll over into the public cloud also, kind of like an overdraft protection or something. So for example, like a Black Friday sale, if you have that private cloud, and then you get a lot more people visit to your website, a lot more visitors to your website, um, you can roll over to the public cloud and have that as a backup. So this is ideal for security sensitive data where you actually don't want to kind of build your own software. You can use the public cloud services. So the last thing I want to talk about is something called Cloud Wars. So, it kind of sounds like Star Wars. So we're kind of in the cloud. Uh, it's been, cloud computing has been around for the past decade, but a lot of the bigger players are just kind of now getting more into it. Amazon kind of was the first. Maybe not really the first, but the first like huge one. Um, so the three big players here in the wars are Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. So it's not really clear who's going to win here. You can see this graph that Microsoft has made a lot of stride, over the past, almost this is from 17 to 22. Google's also been investing a lot more money in cloud computing and machine learning. So, they have stuff like you all used in one of your assignments um, where you don't really have to know how to code. So it's called auto, so automatic, AutoML. And Google's kind of investing a lot of money in that for the future. So their machine learning tools are supposed to be pretty superior to a lot of, Microsoft and Amazon and others. Um, so you have AWS. So the thinking is it's best for companies needing scalability. They have a lot of different services and they have global reach. Microsoft is more, marketed towards enterprises already using Microsoft products, and a lot of them use like Microsoft as a hybrid cloud. And then Google Cloud is really going for the AI, machine learning, and big data applications, which we'll talk about in a second with Spotify. So if you were a cloud analyst, for example, you would compare a lot of different cloud companies and how all these aligned with, a business's strategy and what they actually want to do with cloud computing, and you would make your different recommendations. Here's a table. You don't really have to know this table, but it does show a lot of the different, uh, you know, strengths and weaknesses and specifics of these different cloud platforms, like Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. So a lot of the strengths of Amazon, for example, is it is a mature, big backing company. It has a lot of services again. Microsoft, again, best for kind of hybrid and people who really like the Microsoft ecosystem. And then Google is really starting to be more superior in machine learning and analytics and data processing. There's a lot of different, you know, things here that you don't really have to memorize. Um, Security, strong features. Amazon has something like government cloud. Again, this is a lot of enterprise and then high security, but not as enterprise focused. And the target customers are startups. This is kind of a broad base, everyone. Target is really more enterprise and Microsoft, and then this is more AI driven companies and analytics driven companies that have a lot of data. And these are just kind of what the storage things are called. You don't have to memorize this at all. Um, but basically, these are the differences. Pricing, pay as you go, really enterprise friendly here again. And then apparently, Google is really cost effective for a lot of data and analytics. So, just something to note in the cloud wars. And then the last thing is for discussion post number 6, um, for the Spotify case. I would really like you to watch this video. This video is it's basically like a hype video for Google Cloud, and kind of summarizes why Spotify chose Google Cloud. And then knowing what you just learned in the lecture, about the different models and benefits and that type of thing, answer all these questions about why Spotify might want to move to Google Cloud and use cloud. What benefits did they gain? How can cloud computing improve the user experience on Spotify? What risks might Spotify face? And then explore this. This is Google Cloud's website basically. They have a lot of different machine learning products. What categories do they offer? And choose one and look more into it and, you know, do your best to explain how Spotify might be able to use it. And then what do you think about the next, 5 years? Do you think having quick access to these AI tools in the cloud could actually change the way you work? So, Google has something with no code called, like I just said, Auto ML. That's an M, where a lot of people, non-programmers can actually build machine learning models and test them in, the what is it? The experimentation platform that we talked about previously, using these Auto ML tools. And then for the last one, answer this question. Some privacy advocates argue that we lack a clear understanding of how large companies handle the vast amounts of data they store. So given this uncertainty, how do you see the relationship between between cloud storage in general and data ethics? So they talked about in the video when they visit Amazon Cloud is we're not really certain what the companies are actually doing with our data. So talk a little bit about that as well. Okay, and please email me if you have any questions.